I think it would be very useful for us to review how we got into this economic mess and how we can get out of it. You all know how it started. The Clinton administration, my old boss, decided that they wanted poor people to buy homes. So they ordered Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to increase the percentage of low-income households up to 50% who got their mortgage insurance. And they couldn't do that without eliminating down payments and income verification and without subsidizing the interest rates. And they gave out the mortgages, they sold them in mortgage-backed securities, and they all went belly up, and the securities were worthless, and the banking system teetered on the verge of collapse. While that was happening, in a totally independent phenomenon, also caused by the collapse of housing prices, the economy entered a recession in December of 2007, as the election year began. And it entered the recession largely because since the mid-90s, under my old boss, there had been no increase in real income in the U.S. There had been an increase in consumption, but it was all based on the latest bubble. Internet stocks or housing appreciating, and people cashed in the bubble by getting mortgages, spent the money, and then ran out of it. And eventually the buying power dried up, the bubbles ended, and we had a recession. A typical normal recession that happens when things get out of hand every 5-10 years. So Obama took office right in the middle of this recession, after the banking crisis had really passed, but as the recession was taking hold. And what he should have done was to let the recession run its course, like Bush 41 did. You know that eventually that things are going to come back. Recessions never last longer than 4 or 8 quarters. 2.25 years, I think, is the post-World War II record before this one. And they solved themselves. But instead, Obama took office. And if you like Obama, he had a vigorous, aggressive program to reverse the recession. And if you distrust Obama, like I do, you believe he used the recession as an excuse to expand government spending by leaps and bounds. But the problem is that he borrowed the money, because he couldn't raise taxes, he couldn't get away with it politically. And he was determined to raise spending. So he increased our debt by about $1 trillion. Now, he will claim that the deficit when he took office was $1.3 trillion. In fact, it was that because Bush had lent the money out in TARP. And under our federal system, loans and grants are treated the exact same. There's no capital budget. So when all that money got repaid, the deficit should have gone down to $500 billion. But instead, Obama sent it out the door, this time as spending, to lock in a $1.3, $1.4 trillion deficit. What that did was that it created a global debt implosion crisis. He increased the amount of debt that the public sector owned, all foreign countries, all foreign states, cities, states, governments, from 40 trillion when he took office to 53 trillion now. And the planet Earth has a GDP of 70 trillion. So this became very hard for them to repay. And at the same time, by the way, private sector debt rose by 22 trillion. And when that debt hit the fan, this huge expansion of borrowing by state and local and federal governments in the United States, a $10 trillion expansion in borrowing, 5 to 6 from the feds, 4 to 5 from the states. The world couldn't handle it. It didn't have that kind of money. And the result was that the world freaked out. That is a sophisticated economic term. And everybody said, hey, wait a minute. This level of debt is unsustainable. And the lenders stopped lending, the borrowers stopped borrowing, consumers stopped spending, business stopped investing, and everybody completely ran to a standstill throughout the entire world. And a global recession set in, and a few of the victims were the most prominent of the deadbeat debtors, like Greece and Portugal, soon to be Illinois, by the way. You're 49th now in credit rating. and you were 30-something. And the point is that the whole world froze and stopped making loans. This is not a cyclical crisis like a recession that goes away. This is a long-term crisis. It's called the debt implosion cycle, and it happens every 50 to 60 years in the history of the world. The first one that people identified was the South Sea bubble in the 1730s. Then in the 1840s, it was a land speculation bubble in the U.S., caused a massive depression. Then in the 1890s, there was a huge depression, biggest we'd had so far, and a 10-year freezing of credit that led to the populist movement and the free silver people and all that. And then the 1930s, when the problem was not so much that the stock market crashed, but that everybody was borrowing money to buy the stocks on margin. And as a result, there became a global debt crisis because nobody could pay their debts, and the European nations couldn't pay their debts to the United States, and Germany couldn't pay its war reparations debts to France. So a global debt implosion set in that didn't stop until World War II. That's what we are in the middle of now. And we are here not because of any disease. We are here because of the cure to that disease that Barack Obama passed, the debt that he passed to stop this recession. So it's like the doctors in the Middle Ages. When somebody was sick, they slit open his arm and bled him because they wanted to get rid of the evil spirits that were in his body. And when the poor son of a bitch was half dead, they'd bleed him some more because he still had evil spirits. And when he finally died, they'd say, see, I told you he had evil spirits. So what Obama is doing is, as we sink deeper and deeper into this debt implosion stagnation, his answer is borrow more money, which simply feeds the debt implosion crisis. His other answer is print more money. The concept here is that you make money available and therefore it stimulates commerce. But it ignores the fact that it isn't just money. People have to want to spend it. They have to want to invest it. They have to want to lend it. They have to want to borrow it. And if they don't, you could print all the money in the world and nothing's going to happen. It's like you have a 20-year-old dog and all he wants to do is sleep on the floor, and you're playing out more leash for him. It's not going to do anybody any good. So what Obama has done is to triple the money supply in the United States, from $800 billion to $2.7 trillion. To be fair to him, which I don't like to be, it was about $1.4 trillion when he took office, because the Fed started printing money 6 months before he took office. What that has done is it has cut the value of the dollar in half. Gold, an ounce of gold buys the exact same now as it has for the last 60 years. In 1948, it took 15 barrels of oil to buy an ounce of gold. Now, it takes 17.5 barrels to buy an ounce of gold. Same damn price. A little bit of a fluctuation up or down. The price of oil is the same as it's always been. It's the dollar that's going down. When Obama took office, you could buy an ounce of gold for $850. Now it costs $1,700. That is not gold going up, guys. That is the dollar going down. And Obama has effectively robbed the dollar of 50% of its purchasing power. The reason OPEC was formed in the first place was in 1973, Nixon took us off the gold standard and decided and we would pay for oil in dollars. So in 73, the sheiks set up OPEC because they said if they're going to give us funny money, we're going to keep raising the price to keep it constant in terms of gold. And that's all OPEC has done. Basically just adjusting oil prices to be equal to what the gold value of it should be. There's a fascinating stat about that. In 1948, gas cost 20 cents a gallon. And at that point, the dimes were made of silver. And the value of the dime was the value of 10 cents worth of silver. You could melt it down and sell it for 10 cents. It took 2 dimes to buy a gallon of gas. If dimes still had silver, it would still cost 20 cents to buy a gallon of gas. the cost of the silver and 2 dimes worth there is equal to the $4 it takes now to buy a gallon of gas. So this is what the world that Obama has created. And as he prints more money, as he borrows more money, as he extends this deficit, he worsens the global implosion process. It's like bleeding the patient again and again and again. And what we need to do to stop this is, first of all, get rid of him, because it just get rid of him. And we need to take control of the Senate. And right now, I think we have some fantastic opportunities to do that. I count 10 Senate seats that I think we can win. I think we can win the Democratic seat in Virginia. I think George Allen will defeat Tim Kaine. I think in Florida, Bill Nelson will lose, probably to Connie Mack. I think in New Mexico, Heather Wilson, our lieutenant governor, will probably win that open seat. The only concern I have in life is that Ben Nelson quit before I had a chance to try to kill him. He was the 60th vote for Obamacare, and he's quit now. But I think we'll win that open seat. I think Claire McCaskill is destined for retirement in Missouri. And I think the dumbest single member of the United States Senate, John Tester, will lose his Senate seat in Montana to Denny Rayburn. And I think that Tommy Thompson will win that open seat in Wisconsin. I think that Debbie Stabenow has had it in Michigan. I think Pete Hoekstra is going to beat her. And I think Josh Mandel will defeat Sherrod Brown in Ohio. That's 10 seats. And in every one of those polls, the incumbent's under 50, and in many of them, the Republican is tied with the Democrat incumbent. And if, at this stage, that just means the Democrat is gone. The reason, and by the way, in terms of losses, we'll probably hold the Nevada seat. I hope we hold Scott Brown's seat. We'll lose the Maine seat. Isn't it a shame that that bastion of conservative principles, Olympia Snow, has retired? I don't know how we'll go on. But the other point is that we need to make sure that the Republicans are not rhinos, but conservatives. And right now we have 2 crucial contests going on, and I hope you can get involved in both of them, even though none is in Illinois. One is in Indiana, where the ultimate rhino, Dick Lugar, is trying to get re-elected senator. And he's being opposed by Richard Murdoch, no relation to my boss, who is the state treasurer there running for the Senate. Murdoch is pressing for the ratification of the Law of the Sea Treaty. My book is coming out on May 8th. Its title is Screwed. And part of it is a chapter called Tricks of Treaties, and how the Europeans are trying to tie us up in treaties. The Law of the Sea Treaty provides that we have to cough over to the United Nations half of the royalties from offshore drilling out to 200 miles to our coast. And Lugar's pressing that. We need to get him out of the Senate. And later this week on Thursday, Orrin Hatch in Utah is facing a rebellion from a wonderful conservative named Dan Lilliquist. I'll be talking about that on Hannity on Monday. But then we have got to get rid of Obama. We've got to rein in the spending. We've got to bring the debt down. We've got to cut taxes to stimulate our economy. I believe we have to go back to the gold standard to make sure, because you can't trust a politician with a printing press any more than you can trust an alcoholic with a bottle of scotch. Now, we are going to beat Obama because there has been a fundamental shift in party identification in the United States. Gender and race don't change much. I come from New York. Sometimes gender changes. Normally it doesn't. But party identification does change, but only glacially, very, very slowly. But since the day Obama was elected, there are 5% fewer Democrats in the country and 3% more Republicans. What that 8-point shift means is is that if the same people vote in 12 as voted in 8, some of them are dead, but in Chicago that doesn't happen. Same people vote. Instead of winning by 5, Obama will lose by 3. And he's not going to get the same people. Latinos are running out on him, young people are abandoning him, and middle-aged people are going to be coming out in droves to defeat Obama, as are the elderly, because of Obamacare.
Thank God.
So I think we are going to defeat this guy. But now I want to say something very sensitive to you. And I know that some here are for Romney, some here are for Santorum, some here are for Gingrich. I hope there's nobody here for Paul. But the point is that a week ago, I would have come here and I would have said what I said in my speeches then, that they are 3 excellent men with tremendous abilities, and any one of them can beat Obama, and any one of them would be a great president. Romney for his knowledge of the economy, Santorum for the purity and intensity of his convictions, and Gingrich for his incredible imagination and creativity. It would be a pleasure to watch any of those 3 as president. But there's a fact I need to bring to your attention right now for the primary that's coming up in 2 weeks. 4 times since 1960, a party's nomination for president has only been resolved on the floor of the convention. Goldwater in 64, Humphrey in 68, right here, McGovern in 72, and Ford against Reagan in 76. Have you noticed what those 4 guys all had in common? They lost.
Yes.
And they lost because of the antics at their convention. You recall what happened out here in Chicago. You recall the McGovern convention in Miami. You recall the dumping on Ford that went on as Reagan attacked him running for president in 76. You recall the extremism accusations against Goldwater that Rockefeller made stick in 64. The same thing is happening now. And there is a fact. This is not an opinion. This is not editorializing. This is a fact. The fact is that neither Santorum nor Gingrich can win this nomination before our convention. They'd have to win 70% of the remaining delegates to be selected, and that ain't going to happen. So I am impartial as to the 3 of these candidates, but I am determined that we will not screw up our chances of beating Barack Obama by having a deadlocked convention and have 6 more months of killing each other. By the way, if these opinions are not too outrageous for you, every day I publish a lunch alert video on my website, dickmorris.com, or sign up for it and I'll email it to you. And every Saturday we have a history video. And if you're interested in children's books, we don't have them here, but Dubs Goes to Washington is our latest, and Dubs loses his tennis ball in Washington. And it's a total disaster. It rolls faster and faster. It didn't slow down. And poor Dubs has to look for it all over town. So he goes to the Lincoln Memorial, and we explain something about what Lincoln was about. At the memorial for Abraham Lincoln, Dubs sat up and started thinking. If man from chains is meant to be free, get this silly leash off of me. And all men are created equal, Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence's most famous quote. If people are equal, could it possibly be that dogs are too, especially me? So I think you'll like it. It's not in stores, but it's on Amazon or on my website. Dubs Goes to Washington. So I'll be happy to take questions from everybody.
Dick, my question is, everybody knows that if it goes to the floor, that in all probability, based on history, that we will lose.
Yes. Yes.
What does it take to get the candidates, the 3 leading candidates, to at least acknowledge the primary goal is to win? And one of us, or all 3 of us, we have to do what we have to do. The question is, how can we get the candidates to acknowledge
that this can't go to the convention without sacrificing our chances? The answer is they won't and we can't. But what we can do is vote. We can vote for the candidate, the only candidate that has a chance to win this nomination in June or in May rather than at the end of August. If our convention were the first week in July, I wouldn't say this. I'd be shutting up. Obama got his nomination on June 6th. That was plenty of time. But our convention is the last week of August. And if we don't have a nominee until Thursday, August 29th, and we have only 60 days to run against Obama, and we have 6 months from now to tear each other apart, kiss our chances of saving this country goodbye.
You're right.
In terms of the economic policy, you mentioned about how we're moving deeper and deeper into a debt worldwide, and I'm wondering if when the taxes start kicking in on Obamacare starting in January, how that would affect the economic chances of economic recovery here at home.
Well, the Obamacare taxes are, in a strictly economic term, matched by spending. So it's probably a wash. The one stimulates, the other doesn't. But the Obamacare thing is horrible because of what it will do to our medical system. Let's be clear, there are 3 ways to save Medicare money. One way is to cut the payments to doctors. That ensures there'll be no doctors. It means in particular that I'm 64 right now. I am keeping my health insurance next year because I know that if I get cancer, I can't see an oncologist on Medicare. I'd have to be settled with a GP or a nurse practitioner. So that's one. The other thing you can do is to ration care, and that basically is euthanasia. Now, we can be pro-life or pro-choice, but when you're alive, you damn sure are pro-life. And euthanasia is the most horrible violation of that. The way to do it is a private sector mechanism like health savings accounts, but Obama's never going to do that. But I think that the basic point about this is that the cure that Obama is giving us and keeps giving us keeps making the disease worse.
Here, here.
Why can't the U.S. understand this? I mean,
Why can't Obama understand this?
no, not Obama, but why can't the citizens understand this?
Well, I don't think anyone's explained it really well. I'm hoping to. But I think the other factor is that Obama never intended for recovery to be his main objective. Redistribution was his main objective. And he had 60 votes in the Senate. He had the House, he had the White House. The stars were aligned in the way they had not been since 1965, and he decided to strike while he could. And he moved with his program of reform before the program of recovery. And reform created such uncertainty and such debt that it made recovery impossible. Oh, yes?
Dick, Nick Costello, we're trying to obviously rebuild the Republican Party in Illinois here. We have a race for 42nd ward GOP. What's your advice on how we try to build some kind of a presence for the party in Illinois?
Well, you need a
starting in Chicago.
You need a charismatic leader. You need somebody who can really take it to Emmanuel and really confront him on the corruption, confront him on the waste, confront him on all of that. And you have one in Bill Kelly here. You need somebody who can run up the flag and be in opposition. The only thing you have now is Democratic factions that grumble occasionally, fight with each other over the patronage. What you need is somebody who really fights that. And the reason that I came here and I'm so impressed with Bill is that I've seen that he can thrive in adversity. I said earlier, he's not a palm tree, he's a cactus. He can survive in the desert. He can survive in Illinois and Chicago as a Republican. And he can make his points and he can win his points. And I also believe he'll be assisted by history, because we know how Emmanuel will govern. We know the kind of stuff that he'll do. And we know that in somebody like William Kelly's hands, that could be incredible ammunition and incredible fodder. So it's crucial that we elect Bill.
In '94, when the Republicans won big, Bill Clinton was sworn up under your direction to run in the middle. Obama's run to the radical left. I don't see how he has a chance in the fall.
I agree with you. We're going to beat him by a lot.
Nobody explains it better than Dick Morris. Let's hear it for Dick Morris.
We're here today to mourn a dead Republican Party and resurrect it to life in the city of Chicago. There's a difference between losing and giving up. And the Republican Party here in Chicago has given up and absolutely rolled over and surrendered. And when I learned that Bill was running for chairman of the Chicago Republican Party, I was just thrilled, because Bill is a warrior. He's a battler. I said earlier, he's a happy warrior. He kills you as much with his wit as with his invective, and he sees irony in places where really it's wonderful that he points it out. And when you have a mayor of the city as arrogant, as imperious, as set in his ways as Rahm Emanuel, you need an opposition that is constantly in his face, constantly challenging him, probing what he's doing, making the case against him. And I think that Bill is absolutely ideally suited for that. Somebody asked me earlier how you get around the liberal media. Well, you do it by going after them, by going after Rahm Emanuel in interesting and exciting ways that make people pay attention and make them focus on what you're trying to say. And you do it as the events of the day develop. You do it as each day progresses. You use that day's headlines for your publicity and for articulating your position. And Bill knows how to do that. It's one thing to bloom in a lovely, lush garden that's friendly to the Republican Party. Last night I spoke in another Lake County, but it was Lake County, Florida, in Orlando. And that's a 3-to-1 Republican county. It's easy to be a chairman there. But he's a cactus. He grows where there's no water. He grows where the conditions are hostile. He grows and he thrives on adversity. And he knows how to make lemonade out of a lemon. And that's an absolutely essential qualification for a Chicago politician.